Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you've had a nosh and a nap because it's time for tennis. This is Eat Sleep Tennis. We are here to talk today some challenger tennis. Unfortunately, our third partner is feeling a little under the weather, so send your best to Candace. We hope she's feeling better as soon as possible. But it's just me and Steve today. How you doing, Steve? How are things on the other side of planet Earth?
Not too bad, very hot. So I think it's just ticked over about 38.5 degrees, which I think is about 104, 105 in your world. So look, it's warm. It would be warm for players sitting in hotels a little bit up the road. But look, I think this week in particular is just, in a lot of ways, it's the calm before the storm that we have next week, I think, in Melbourne. But look, how are you going over in the States? And I guess my question for you is, on a scale of Diana Yastremska to 10, how are things?
Novak Djokovic? Look, somewhere in the middle, maybe somewhere just slightly below middle. It's been an okay week. Personally, everything's going all right. Hasn't been the best week in the NBA for me personally. Thankfully, our prop picks at Ace NBA Previews have been picking up the slack a little bit as well. Some of the little tennis stuff I've been putting out. It was a nice week there. But all in all, I'm Novak Djokovic. It wasn't the best week in the world for me, but I'm okay. I'll be fine.
And for listeners who are just tuning in and maybe aren't aware, Diana Yastremska is currently provisionally suspended, I think, by the tour due to a test result that she had in November, I think it was. She actually made the decision to, while contesting that suspension, get on a plane and come to Australia to potentially play in the Australian Open, where she managed to turn this decision on its head. She then ended up being on one of those planes that had one of the positive tests, so she's been in hard quarantine. And now, as a result of updates in her case, she's actually banned from attending the tennis centre at all. So, look, it's probably been a bit of a waste of Tennis Australia's money, her coming. But, look, I'm sure she's having fun just 20 minutes up the road from me, sitting there having to think about kind of how to plot her case to try and get back onto the tour. Because, look, I think we will all miss her in her medical timeouts. It's been something that we've been able to talk about over the last couple of years. But never mind, the focus of today is onto challenger tennis, and we've got two tournaments.
We do. I think we're starting in Antalya, right? In Turkey?
Yep, let's do that. So that is an outdoor clay tournament. And what we'll do is we'll just go a bit like the other week. We'll go through quarter by quarter. So we'll just pop that, for those who are watching along live, we'll pop that up on the screen here. So we have the first quarter.
Yeah, we don't have outrights for this particular tournament. We will have outrights once we get to the indoor hardcore tournament in Quimper. We'll start here with Antalya, again, outdoors on the dirt. Munar's the top seed here and has, kind of a dream first quarter here. As I start to look at this list, no one really sticks out to me as overly competitive. If there were outrights here, he'd probably be a nice price to would take the tournament. I guess he'd be a pretty heavy favorite. What do you think, Steve? As you look at this, is there anybody that sticks out to you that can take out Munar here in this quarter?
Look, it is a bit of a tricky quarter to gauge because obviously this, we haven't seen them play on clay for quite a while. Munar's level and consistency is probably what will work in his favor. The rest of this group, or the majority of the quarter, when you go through them, it's a lot of players that, look, if they were to redline or really produce a really top-level performance, that they could maybe knock him off. But if you're playing the consistency game, and look, none of these players have made the Australian Open field, so they're all going to be gunning to get as many ranking points as they can while they watch the next couple of weeks in Australia unfold. I think he seems that the logical pick here out of this particular group from a consistency standpoint, but that might, looking through there might be a case, and I'm probably not as keen to get involved with him in perhaps match to match. But I think overall, if you're trying to play an outright here, I think that's where I'd be leaning.
As if you kind of forced me to pick somebody, his toughest match might be his first match here against Taberner. Petrovic is somebody that sticks out kind of in my numbers, but it's a pretty small sample size. If you had to pick somebody besides Munar, who would it be?
Ooh. Look, it probably would be Taberner, and that's probably what's putting me off, I think, a little bit in that first round matchup. You can maybe make a case for Varilas, but look, when you go through them all, there hasn't been enough. Kovalik did put together a solid performance, but he's, this last week in Istanbul, but he's switching surfaces. So, look, I'd be more inclined to say that the winner of that first match between Taberner and Munar is probably going to shape the quarter.
All right, we still like Munar there, but it seems pretty much like it's the winner of that first match. Nothing else from me here. How about you?
No, I think we can move on to the second quarter.
All right, as we start to jump into that second quarter, Steve's going to pull up the picture there, but we've got Bagnus at the top. We've got Altemeyer at the bottom. A couple qualifiers in there, folks. Those blank spots are not, in fact, buys. Those are just qualifier spots. We'll start with you this time, Steve. As you start to look at this group, do any names stick out to you, and who do you see advancing?
Again, a bit like the first quarter, there looks like there may be a match that kind of sets up the quarter in a way, and it's that Lorenzi versus Altemeyer match just down the bottom there. Look, Lorenzi, he's back onto his favoured clay here. He got a match under his belt last week. But Altemeyer, I think, is someone who really does intrigue me, I guess, from a, looking at his recent form, that the sample isn't overly large, but, if we saw what he did in that back part of 2020, he does present as a bit of an intriguing prospect here. If it was 5 years ago, Tommy Robredo might appeal a little bit more. Bagnus didn't really grab my eye last week on the indoor hard court, but obviously he's come into his favourable surface here. And Maleka has really struggled, I think, over the last 6 to 12 months in particular. So I'm happy to kind of move away from them. So I'd probably be looking towards the bottom of this quarter. How about yourself?
Yeah, I was thinking Altemeyer was the name that stuck out to me here. I mean, Bagnus obviously could. It looks like he has maybe the easier little section there. I think you're right. The first match with Lorenzi might be tough there, but it's Bagnus to me or Altemeyer. I'd probably go with Altemeyer. Just given maybe some of the inconsistencies for Bagnus, but again, nothing crazy sticks out to me. I mean, do you really think that anybody in this section we just talked about, Munar there, could really give him any trouble?
I wouldn't think so. I'd be having Munar as a pretty comfortable favourite. I think in maybe Altemeyer potentially, but I think outside of that, you'd be looking to Munar and his form over an extended period of time here. And look, I was just having a quick glance over the qualifying list, and look, outside of maybe Moroni, who could redline for a bit, there isn't anyone that I would be particularly concerned about, falling into that position there against Ilhan in the first round in terms of strength for Altemeyer's draw there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Again, we'll kind of look at those names at the top and the bottom. I'm curious to see what their match prices look like, but those names stick out to me. But like you said, I think it's kind of, we're still looking at Munar here. I mean, if Tabner is able to beat Munar and kind of win that first quarter, then do you think it's, the winner of the second quarter might be favored?
Yeah, I think so. I would probably go, looking at this list here, that, Altemeyer, Bagnus, and I'd say that either of those two would probably be that gentle favourite, I think, going into that that type of semi-final matchup. Obviously, both players will have had a couple of wins under their belt, but I think I think a lot of people will be drawn to that late 2020 form of Altemeyer. So I don't think we'll see significant value on him in a number of the matches across the week, but he's certainly a player to watch.
Yeah. I think that just about wraps up the second quarter, unless you have anything else.
No, I think we can move on to the third.
Leo Meyer, Greek Spore, Eichel again, Dominguez, Safwat. Again, another week for him, so a surface change there. And then Seabolt Wild. Who sticks out to you here? This isn't, as we've looked at the quarter so far, this is kind of the most underwhelming to me so far.
Yeah, look, I would tend to agree here. And I think when you look at it, it's one of those cases of, has the extended break done Leonardo Meyer any good? We saw him kind of trail off a bit and not look as strong, I think, through the last kind of 12 to 18 months. So I think he is actually an underdog to Greek Spore in that first round match there. Again, like you said, a lot of surface changes. Saboth Wheel, he didn't grab me last week. But again, indoor hard court certainly isn't his favorite surface. But yeah, look, it is relatively underwhelming. It's if a couple of players down there like Saboth and Safwat were off their game, Dominguez could maybe make a little run there, but I'm not thinking, outside of, Greek Sport putting together a super impressive week of tennis, which is always the question mark with him backing up match to match. I'm struggling to see a favorite, I guess, out of this quarter going on to win the lot. How about yourself?
Yeah, if I had to pick somebody, I mean, Greek Sport is the name that really sticks out to me. Again, from a purely data perspective, he seems to kind of be head and shoulders against the rest of the group here. Now his first match again, like you said, against Meyer could be a little tough because Meyer is an older player coming back, but I think Greek Sport probably moves ahead and is rightfully the favorite there. So I kind of have him circled in my bracket.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this tournament tricky overall, not just the fact that we haven't seen a lot of these players play on clay for quite a while, but also that a lot of these players that we do like are probably coming up against their trickiest opponents of the quarter very early on in the tournament.
That's a tough part about draws. All right, so we don't love the third quarter, and I think that probably about ends anything interesting we have to say there. I mean, is there anybody that sticks out to you match to match here? I mean, Safat was kind of okay last week, but this isn't his best surface. Again, there's just not anybody else who really pops for me. I mean, maybe Menendez.
Yeah, look, I don't think off such little tennis and recent form to go off, I'm pretty happy to give that one a miss. I'd rather sit it out and watch, a Safwat or someone go for a run. I'd be more comfortable with that than trying to pick someone off not a lot of clay form.
All right, you've got the fourth quarter already pulled up here. I think this is probably the best quarter of the tournament. Some pretty fun names here: Massetti, Tabillo. Ramanathan, not his surface, obviously, but a fun player to watch week to week. Gallon, obviously, back on dirt where he's kind of happier. I mean, this looks like a Massetti or Gallon quarter to me. Massetti is someone that I think I'm probably going to be looking to bet here, maybe match to match. I'm curious to see what kind of his prices are here. But what do you think here, Steve?
Yeah, look, I would tend to agree. Had you asked me 6 months ago about Massetti versus Tabillo, I probably would have taken, I think he's plus $2.75 or $3.75 odds in this first round match, but there's nothing off the last couple of weeks that could possibly convince me to go for Tabillo here. Look, Massetti looks to be the one there and Galan at the bottom. So this looks like a nice balanced quarter, I guess, compared to some of the others that, look, I wouldn't be that surprised if we had a Galan versus Massetti quarterfinal here.
Yeah, that does seem kind of where we're headed. I mean, who do you see maybe, again, to kind of flip this on its head a little bit? Could somebody like Kirkin, I guess Tabillo maybe might be your choice. I mean, who kind of upsets that apple cart?
Look, potentially, I mean, if you got a really good form qualifier, like I said, maybe a Moroni or someone to kind of pop in there if you were to make it through. Outside of that, it is a little bit tricky. Escovedo, I'm not as thrilled about on clay. Same with Gomez. Kirkin, look, was solid in his last outing, but again, coming to here, I'm not as keen on. It's really hard to make a case for any of them, I think.
All right, so we'll look forward to the Massetti, Gallon match. That should be kind of fun. Who do you favor there?
Ever so slightly Massetti.
And I think we're going to get Massetti as an underdog there, honestly.
I think so, looking at the numbers, that there's a potential. But look, it might come down to how they play getting through to that quarterfinal there. And, if one's got a couple of one-sided victories and one, has to battle through a little bit, they might open up some value on one side compared to the other. But look, it's certainly more balanced. But yeah, there's a few question marks. And there's a few matches that I'm happy to just watch and take in through that first round of the tournament there.
All right, so that's a good one to put a pin in. Then if we get that Massetti-Gallon match and you see Massetti open as a dog, probably some value there on Massetti. All right, so I think that wraps up the fourth quarter there and kind of our general thoughts on the tournament. Anything else here, Steve, before we kind of recap our picks to win?
No, I think that's all. As I said, look, a bit like, I didn't make any selections throughout the week for Istanbul last week, and that was just a preference of, look, I'd rather just watch and observe. I'm not in any rush to make any picks. I don't have to make a set number of picks per day or anything. So just happy to watch and kind of absorb things a little bit, I think, here to start. But look, it's an interesting field here, and it's nice to kind of have, players who are more interested in the clay court and playing on the clay that are, here and in action compared to when they were playing on the indoor hard courts last week.
Yeah. It's always good to start slow and kind of, get more of a feel for it. I know that's kind of what we said a few times, but it's generally discretion is the better part of valor, I think, is the best way to say it.
Correct. And look, we'll just go through and instead of going through our kind of overvalued and undervalued and our picks to win, we'll just stick with one selection, I think, for these tournaments. As I said, they're just easing into the start of the season. So we'll start with you, Alex. Who do you like to win this tournament?
If I have to pick somebody, I'm going to go with Munar here. I think that either Gallen or Massetti could really have a nice week and win this tournament, but simply the fact that they're in the same quarter kind of pushes me away from them. You start to look at Munar's draw. I think it was pretty clear as we were breaking down the top two quarters that he kind of has the best of the draw here. So happy to grab him, and pick him as my winner this week.
And look at that, we have a little bit of consensus. So I tend to agree with you here. Look, I'm going to go with Munar as well. Like I said, I think when we were talking through that first quarter, there's a couple of players there that might be able to redline and take a set and challenge him. But I think from a consistency standpoint, I think he's the player to pick here. So I will keep an eye on, if there are any outrights that do come out. But look, overall, I think he's the most consistent option of a couple of those top players. And when you think about the quality of his draw, he's avoiding Mazzetti and Galan and a couple of those others until the final. I think that would be the way that I would be trending, I think, for this tournament.
Beautiful. So I think that kind of wraps up our thoughts there on Antalya, and we'll switch to an indoor hardcourt tournament in France. And this is one of the fun parts about tennis, folks. Make sure you know which tournament you're handicapping and what surface it's on, because especially in the Challenger, I think most weeks you have one on clay and one on hard. Some are in, some are out. We were talking about that. So be very careful as you're going through and categorizing and handicapping these matches that you're aware. Again, we'll be on indoor hard courts here, and Steve was nice enough to bring up the first quarter there. We've got Luca Pouille, Gojevic down there at the bottom. Rinderknech, last week's winner, continues to play indoor hards, and which should be a nice setup for him. We'll see how much energy he has after kind of the long week and winning there. What do you see here in the first quarter? It looks kind of fun to me.
It does look fun. It's probably worth mentioning that Luca Pouille, I think, his wife gave birth to their child a matter of days ago, I think it was. So obviously keep that in mind, that his priorities may be slightly elsewhere, across this week, and coming off such little tennis and some injury-plagued periods. Again, look, we do have to wait for some qualifiers, and there's a couple of big serving qualifiers that might be able to shape this a little bit. But I think the player that I'm looking at here, could maybe make a little bit of a run and trying to kind of oppose that form of or Pouille, or that position with Pouille is probably Marta. I think he does again have a tricky first round match here with Offner, but could potentially snatch that number one seed draw moving forward, and that could really play a role here. I'm generally not as keen. Rinderknech was solid and very impressive as a qualifier, going all the way through and winning Istanbul. But look, I'm not as keen to kind of go with him again for the second week in a row. I do know that there's been a little bit of a question mark around some of the players traveling, I think, into France as well for this, around COVID and needing exemptions. So watch this space a little bit with this draw, but I'd be going to Marta as perhaps a slightly more value selection, I think, in this section of the quarter. How about yourself? Is there anyone standing out there to you?
It's interesting to see Pouille in here, given that I think he would have direct entry into the first round of the Australian Open. I mean, I think that's obviously a decision based around what's happening and obviously having a kid. So I wonder how focused he is here, given that it's in his home country, or maybe he's just going to take the bag, if you will, and get out after the first round. I know that it is generally bad to pick someone off a week of winning, but I love the way this sets up for Rinderknech here. I'll put kind of the big asterisk here. He played today, or I guess in the last 12 to 16 hours, if you will. My guess is he probably gets his first round match Tuesday, maybe if he's lucky on Wednesday. So hopefully he has a day or two to acclimate and get some rest there. But this sets up really nice for him. It's an indoor hardcourt tournament. He's got the serve here to do very well. We'll see what qualifier he gets, but I like this little section, given that we don't feel great about Pouille and that Marta isn't necessarily the most consistent player. I do like your pick in Marta. If I had to take somebody in the top, it would. But I'm going to stick with Rinderknech here. I think he has a chance to continue to play well in a season where few people have form. I'll take the guy with some form.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And look, having a quick look at the qualifiers who are left to still play and make their way into this draw, one to maybe keep an eye on is Marius Koppel, who, although his outdoor form and his AO qualifying form, losing to Sweeney, wasn't great, he has shown over the last couple of years that he can produce some pretty solid tennis on the indoor hardcourt compared to the outdoor. So that's just one to keep an eye on. But look, I would agree there that, looking at the strength of this draw, winning form is good form, not a lot of tennis. So I'd be more swayed, and I do tend to agree with you there. I think with this section of this quarter of the draw, given that they haven't really been playing a lot of tennis recently.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense to me here. Any other thoughts here for you on this first quarter? I think I'm pretty much good.
No, I am good to move on to the next one, I think. And here we go.
Beautiful. There we go. We've got Kudla there at the top of the second quarter, Nakashima there in the middle, Guile at the bottom. Another fun set of names again. I think this is a pretty solid tournament overall. As I start to look at this, Kudla has all the talent, I think, to take care of this quarter. It might be someone who could possibly win the tournament, but based on everything we talked about in the first quarter, I don't know if he has necessarily the easiest path, because there is a couple of nice names in here. I mean, somebody like Nakashima, if he puts it all together, I mean, it's not, we're going to say a lot probably on this show. As a younger player with all the tools that he has, he continues to be someone that could be very good. But I like this. This sets up nicely for Kudla here. I've actually got a -2 games in that first match there, but this looks like a pretty solid quarter for him. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I tend to agree. The only question mark with Kudla is the fact that he did have that positive test for COVID during the AO qualifying. So I think he was the one that had that test result come through while he was on court. He said he didn't have any symptoms or any issues with it. So I'm assuming, though, that the fact that he's in this draw, that he's there and on site by this point in time, we should have heard something else, I think, to suggest if there was some other reason, or he were to withdraw. Obviously, you need to acknowledge that Ernest Golbus is here and he's having a go, and good on him for kind of persisting with the challenge. Yeah, Ernie, as I've popped there in the comments, Ernie title watch is on. Look, it is a relatively favourable draw, but again, it's hard to know what he's really going to produce. He hasn't produced enough consistency across a 3-set match recently, as opposed to wanting to take him to win a tournament. But look, I agree with what you said around Nakashima. I think there's going to be so much variation between his best and worst. It's going to be a real struggle, I think, to try and catch him in some of these tournaments. That second match between Lachko and Istomin is just a real veteran affair. And maybe Lachko could maybe make a little run there if Kudla is below his best, but I think we might struggle to find the winner of the overall tournament from this quarter.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. If again, maybe Kudla puts it together and makes a hot run, but I agree. I don't think anybody from the second quarter is really going to win it, unless we have a big variance week. Who knows? Who
knows? It'll be the week to do it. Well, everyone's watching the challenger level.
But does anybody stick out to you here match to match? Again, I'm on Kudla here in the first round. I'll probably bet him a few times, assuming he's playing. But I don't know if there's anybody else that sticks out to me. I mean, are you going to bet on Ernie for fun or for serious?
I haven't bet on Ernie for a little while. Look, he's a slight favorite here. I don't generally like to take Ernie when he's a favorite, just as a general rule. Just having a look through, Nakashima looks maybe a little bit short of that round at $1.34 or -300 kind of zone. Looking at the first match, I'd probably lean to perhaps a play on Kudla there. Need to look a little more into it this afternoon. But as I said, I'm not jumping into a lot of head-to-head matches, considering I know what's around the corner in terms of other tournaments ahead. I'd have to have a look. Have you got the Lachko versus Istomin odds on you by any chance?
I do not.
That's all right. I'll see if I can quickly grab this up. Istomin's a favourite there. I could maybe try and go against him there in some capacity, or maybe playing over. I just don't think Istomin's shown enough consistency to be a slight favourite in this one. But look, it's playing average form off against less than average form. So it's only if you really want to get involved. So I probably won't be putting my money into that match. But it could be, they've both showed some indoor form over the years and could turn back the clock in 2021.
All right, before we do something silly, let's move on to the third quarter then. Yeah. Another couple good names here. Huesler again this week. Bonzi, the second-place finisher last week. What do you see here in the third quarter, Steve?
Again, I guess, thinking about it, if you do like Rinderknecht from last week, maybe you do like Bonzi as well. Yannick Maiden's an interesting spot there, but I think, again, we have another match down the bottom there of Gaston versus Barrere. I think Barrere does have a tricky match up there to begin, but could put together a solid week of tennis here. Haven't seen enough from Fabiano, to be honest, recently to be jumping into him on an indoor hard court. yeah, that Huesler-Bonzi is probably, see how the last week's form matches up. And then that Gaston-Barrère, I think the winners of those two matches are probably going to find themselves in the quarterfinals here, barring some impressive performance from Maiden. How about yourself?
Yeah, it's another quarter where it seems like the guys that I want to pick to win are playing each other in the first round. Bonzi and Huesler look like the two best players to me in this quarter. It's just a shame. Again, they got to play each other in the first round. If I had to pick somebody else, maybe Barrère here, but don't feel great about that. So see who wins that Huesler-Bonzi match and kind of go from there. But I think it's kind of the winner there to take this quarter. And maybe challenge for the whole thing. I mean, you saw Bonzi make the final this week. I think the two of them are talented enough. See if maybe they can put it all together.
And it might be that case for Huesler that he will have a slightly longer break than Bonzi coming in, and then he can use that experience of having played last week and having built a little bit of form there to kind of carry that through this quarter as well against players who haven't played for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Anything else on the third for you before we jump into the fourth?
No, I reckon we jump straight onto that final quarter.
Rodionov at the top, Corday at the bottom, and I think we'll have a pick for a winner here, Steve. How about you?
I tend to agree. I think I think when we both kind of went away separately and looked at this particular draw, I think we were both drawn to someone whose name is right down the bottom of this particular draw, and that's Sebastian Korda. Again, looking at it, you've got a couple of big servers here through this section, but we saw from Korda what he was able to produce in Delray Beach the other week, even though it was on outdoors. He's not afraid of playing those bigger servers and looks pretty comfortable on serve himself. Probably the most interesting matchup, I think, of the first round, maybe in that top little pocket there, the Rodionov versus Kouakoud. I think they're both really interesting players who, I'm hoping we'll see them kind of take their game to the next level through 2021, but it's very hard to go past Korda, I think, in this section. How about you're agreeing with me on that one still?
Yeah, I mean, Korda's got a really nice draw here, and we do actually have outrights. He's plus 550 to win this tournament. If you have Unibet or any book that has the same odds as Unibet, you'll see those come up. Pui is the favorite at plus 500. Obviously, a ton of question marks around him, so actually some value here, I think, even from an odds perspective, in Korda at plus 550. The rest of the quarter, not some talent there. Rodionov is someone, or maybe even, like you said, I don't even know what the heck you just said or what that name was, but Rodionov, or the guy he plays in the first round, could possibly make a run there.
You can call him Enzo.
Kouakoud?
Just call it. You can call him Enzo.
Enzo. Yeah, Enzo Rodionov might be able to make a run here, but I like Korda. I mean, the only other thought I had here was I've got Marcora to win that first round match as a dog. I'm not sure why he's not favored there against the wild card, but from an outright perspective, this is a nice spot for Korda, and if you do have the opportunity to bet him at plus 550, I think that's one of the rare times there's a value at a smaller number.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with these tournaments. These players aren't itching to get to an ATP match or ATP tournament next week. There aren't any scheduling conflicts, so that they're going to be around for the week and try and put their best foot forward. And I think Korda has shown with his start to the year that he's found that form, and I think that translates relatively well to indoor for himself as well.
All right, so we both like Korda here, and like you said, that Rodionov match there sticks out to you. Anybody else, worth kind of adding a tidbit about before we wrap?
No, I don't think so for that one. I think, look, it's going to be. It'll be an interesting week of tennis, and I'm keen. There's a number of, as I probably mentioned through talking through that draw, there's a number of matches that I am keen to watch. A couple of big servers there who could, perhaps snatch a set or two, as underdogs. But look, all in all, it's I'm just curious to see which players make the most of this situation while the ATP and WTA players are hanging out, ready for prepping themselves for next week.
That's good. It'll give them something to watch while they're hanging out in the hotel rooms.
Let's.
All right, Steve, anything else here before we wrap up another week of Eat Sleep Tennis?
No, I don't think so. If anyone has any questions or wants to shoot through anything, just let us know either through our personal Twitter accounts or at Eat Sleep Tennis on Twitter. We also have a look at the comments and everything on YouTube as well, which is where we also stream live. But that's more so for anyone who's listening back on any of the podcasts. So, if you're listening through Podbean or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you follow along and subscribe to the podcast, so they'll come through. I think Podbean and Spotify are almost instantaneous, and I think Apple's a little bit slower, and then Google's a little bit slower again.
Yeah.
But I think, look, all in all, it's making sure that we eat and sleep well, because there's going to be 6 tournaments, I think, in Melbourne next week. So 3 on the women's side and 3 on the men's. So I think we have a massive week coming up.
If you lamented the little bit of a shorter show today and no Candace, we'll make sure that she's nice and healthy, because we have a bunch to cover next week as things get back into the swing. With the Australian, we got the double Melbournes, all sorts of good stuff.
I think that's going to be good. And also coming into the middle of next week, they're having the Australian Open draw coming out as well. So look, there's going to be plenty of things to talk about. There's going to be plenty of content. And a big thank you to everyone who's liked and followed and subscribed and given us feedback. We've been really happy with the feedback so far, and hoping to continue things on as we head towards February and what looks to be probably the biggest. It's going to be the biggest 3 weeks, I think, of tennis in recent memory. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. The build-up should be fantastic. Given all the complaints and a lot of the nonsense we've had, things have quieted up, and I think once tennis starts playing, people will forget and move forward. So I'm excited.
Perfect. All righty. Well, we might wrap it up for there. Thank you very much, Alex, for jumping on, and hopefully, hopefully one of Munar or Quarter can find their way to winning the tournaments this week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.